Welcome to Sightseeing Japan, the podcast where we explore the land of the divine. I'm Paul Bresson.
And I'm Jason Nealing, the divine that Paul was talking about.
Just give yourself a nickname? I thought I'm the one that did that.
No, that's just what people call me. You haven't heard that?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Oh. I guess you don't hang around a lot of my other friends.
Oh, sure.
Well, welcome to the last episode of Season 8. It's been a fun one. I think we had some good topics this season, huh?
Absolutely. And the trip recaps are always fun.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking, those are maybe my favorite episodes to go back and listen to. You know, because for us, that's such a reminder of the trip.
Yeah. Well, they're really fun to record, too. And we don't need to do as much research as we do for other episodes. And,
Right.
you know, I think depending on who's listening, different listeners have different preferences for which types of episodes they enjoy. But I do think that we've gotten a fair amount of positive feedback on those trip recaps.
Yeah. Every couple of years, it's nice to go back and listen to an old one and be like, oh, yeah, we did all those things.
Totally. I'm excited to tell you all about my upcoming trip.
Yeah, you got a 9-day trip. How many episodes is that going to take you to tell us about?
I've been thinking about that because we usually do like one episode per week, but
Right. But 9 days, that's over a week.
I think it has to be 2 episodes. Would you mind?
I wouldn't. I was thinking it should be because I've noticed that when we're doing the trip recaps, a day that we're together seems to go by faster than the days that you're there before or after I go.
I just get so much done when I'm by myself. I can just fly around and do 50 things.
You do, but I think you're also you're so detail orientated, you know, you're like, I went here to eat and this and that. Sometimes we skip by it when we're eating at different places and stuff.
Well, don't worry, Paul. I'll give you every single little detail.
And show me all the pictures too, I am sure.
Definitely. Videos, maybe. I've been shifting more towards videos in the latest trips, but...
Okay. I'll take some pictures in Germany and shove them down your throat.
Yeah, no, I want to see them. I've never been to Germany.
Sweet.
By the way, since this is the last episode of Season 8, I just want to point out, again, like I did in the last episode, that today a Patreon post is going to be going up for our Shogun and Emperor tier patrons to suggest a topic for the poll. And then 4 weeks from now, the poll will start where the Daimyo, Shogun, and Emperor tier patrons can all vote on those topics to choose a winner. So keep an eye out for that. And since our patrons will hear this episode a week before the rest of the public does, I'll specify that the Patreon post is going to go up when this is released to the public. So,
thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no problem. I also hope, Paul, that during our break we can find time to do some more for our patrons. I would like to record another folklore episode. I think those are really fun, and we get positive feedback on those.
Okay.
You in?
I'm not opposed. I definitely want to do something. I don't mind doing another one, but we've done that before. Maybe we get really clever and think of a new cool thing. Not that I have it yet.
Okay, we'll see if Paul can come up with something else, but...
We could do both, too. We could do more than one thing.
Yeah, let's do some things.
Let's
do multiple things.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so today we're talking about Shinto, Japan's native religion. And Paul, I know I had brought this up as a possible topic years ago, probably even, but I know you were hesitant to cover this one. Do you want to talk about why you were reticent about this?
Yeah, a couple reasons. One is it's just a little bit harder topic to research. Some topics are heavier than others. When we're researching a city or forest bathing, like the last episode, is not quite the same as trying to understand the dogma and history of an entire religion. So it's more to digest in that. And how do we turn that into a compact, good episode? But also the whole religious thing, you kind of got to be careful what you say about religions in a way, or it's a different, more sensitive topic than many other topics that we cover as well. But I will say that we've covered so many things now. We've talked about shrines, we've talked about festivals, we've talked about some holidays that happen in Japan that are Shinto-based. We've covered enough stuff now that I think I have a better foothold and understanding to do more of the whole thing. And also maybe the History of Japan episode gave me a little bit of confidence that, all right, we can take on extremely broad topics and still find a way to deliver an episode on it.
Yeah, I mean, religions are weird. I'm just going to say that. Religions are weird. They're complicated. And even within a specific religion, there can be many different, sometimes conflicting beliefs. So yeah, it's really difficult to take a whole religion and condense it into something that makes sense and is consistent. And different practitioners of religions emphasize different parts of the same scriptures or whatever. And Shinto is kind of a different beast than a lot of other, organized religions. Shinto wasn't really organized for most of the time that it existed, so it's very different. And we'll get into the ways that it's very different. But yeah, I understand your reasons, and I agree with them, but I'm also confident that we can get this across in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, it's time. I'm ready.
Well, let's start with the basics. Before Buddhism came to Japan, there was Shinto, which basically means the way of kami. And kami are essentially gods. We'll go into that more later. We have a section about that. But Shinto is an animistic religion, meaning that it's based around the belief that all things possess a soul or a spirit. So it's not just humans, it's not even just animals. Plants have spirits, rocks have spirits, rivers, mountains, even just inanimate objects have spirits. It's also very nature-focused, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're trying to conceptualize Shinto based on your understanding of a monotheistic religion, like Christianity or Judaism or Islam, any of that, you can just put that out of your head. Like, you're not going to find a ton of similarities here.
Yeah, Shinto lacks a single founder or holy figure that you could point to, and there are not strict dogmas or a centralized holy text like the Bible, which makes it very different from many other religions.
Shinto actually has much more in common with pagan or folk religions. It's more like a loose system of spirituality than it is an organized religion. And a lot of historians even argue that Shinto was never really a unified religion at all until relatively recently. And we'll get into that. There's been a lot of different forces acting upon the idea of what Shinto is.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is interesting about Shinto is there's not really much emphasis on any particular moral code. Christianity, it's got the Ten Commandments, it's got the concept of sin, right? It's kind of telling you how to live your life, and it's really a focus of Christianity, but Shinto doesn't focus on that. But I also don't think it's accurate to say that it doesn't tell you how to live life. It does tell you how to live life, but it's more about like being in accordance with kami or being in harmony with the universe rather than being in line with a certain moral code.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's a way to help people become connected and harmonize with the natural world around them.
I also mentioned like Christianity, Islam, Judaism are monotheistic. They have a single god.
Yes.
But Shinto is polytheistic. So instead of a single god, there are many, many gods or kami or spirits. Again, we'll get into that concept. I don't think it's really super helpful to translate it as kami equals gods. They're different.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But if you're thinking about polytheistic religions, you might think, like the Greek or Roman pantheons, they got these like hierarchies of gods. But it's not really quite like that either, is it?
No, it's not.
It's more loose and flowy.
Yeah,
I feel like those words are going to be coming up a lot in this episode. Everything like just feels loose and flowy.
Well, you can pick which kamis that you want to interact with and that you want to worship. So it's very self-guided in that way.
There's also the idea that a lot of kami are like location-based. There can be local gods that get a lot of attention in a certain area. If you live next to a volcano, you're going to want to make sure the god of that volcano is happy, right?
Yes. Yep. So Shinto is native to Japan and is found mostly in Japan, although it has spread out a little bit to some other places these days. There's over 100,000 public shrines in Japan. And It is Japan's largest religion ahead of Buddhism, but this is where it gets murky because in Japan, there seems to be a belief that it's okay to believe in multiple different religions. Like we said, there's no right or wrong way with Shinto. So Shintoism and Buddhism are very intertwined, and most Japanese people kind of pick and choose in their lives when they're going to follow Buddhist tenets and when they're going to follow Shinto tenets. So that is kind of a unique thing as well.
Well, Paul, let's dig into the history of Shinto a bit, shall we?
Sure.
So surely there were religious ideas in Japan going way back, but as far as I can tell, the ones that seem to connect directly with modern Shinto can be traced back to Yayoi culture around the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC. So the Yayoi people, those are the guys that brought agriculture from mainland Asia to Japan, where they intermingled with the indigenous hunter-gatherers, and they also brought with them religious ideas and creation myths. And since farming was such a big deal in their culture, a lot of these early religious ideas tied in very closely with that. So you can imagine shamans performing rites to ask the gods for a good harvest, or to thank the gods for a good harvest in the fall, stuff like that.
There's archaeological evidence from this period that suggests they were already using bronze bells and weapons and mirrors to play a role in kami-based rituals.
Interesting. That'll come up again.
Yeah.
So by around the 4th century CE, society had started to organize into clans known as uji, and each uji would have a kami. And uji kami, but you know how Japan likes to stick words together. That just became ujigami.
Yep.
And ujigami is the kami for your specific clan, and the head of the clan would be in charge of worshiping that ujigami. And again, most of this worshiping had to do with agriculture. And like we mentioned in the intro, these kami could be nature kami, mountains, rivers, trees. They could also be ancestors. This was new to me, Paul. Kami could even be kami of ideas, like growth or creation. I had not heard that before.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's so, I don't know. I saw Shinto described as ambiguous or vague. And I feel like the more I dug into the research, the more it felt like those were really fitting terms. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So things started to change when Buddhism and Confucianism made their way into Japan around the 5th to 7th centuries CE. I think I said 6th century before. And at the same time, political power in Japan was gradually centralized, and that also had an impact on Shinto because the imperial government started to spread the word about their kami and the kami of other powerful families. And this is when things started to get a little bit more organized, right? The state started to endorse specific shrines, stuff like that. And the imperial court was also responsible for a couple texts that we've talked about in a bunch of other episodes, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. These texts were supposed to compile these various oral myths and religious ideas. Because remember, before this time, Japan didn't have a writing system, right? They didn't have any way to write down these myths and stuff until they got a writing system from China. So this was an attempt to finally have things recorded. And the funny thing about having things recorded in text is that they don't change as easily, right? Oral traditions can change with every telling of a story, but once it's written down, people can look back at that and be like, oh, that's the source of truth. And even now, historians are referencing these texts. And another purpose of these texts is that the imperial court was able to assert that the imperial line was descended from the kami. So it was a way to legitimize their rule, their power. And as we'll see, Shinto was used for a very long time to legitimize the power of various rulers of the country.
Absolutely. It was also during this time that the central government created a council of kami, and they used this to help coordinate rituals at the provincial level and up to the state level. So these hierarchies started forming for them to be able to project their ideas and powers, which I think you're already talking about a bit. This is also where Buddhism and Shinto got so intertwined and mixed together that it was hard to discern sometimes what was each religion. It was all kind of just becoming a religion of Japan in a way.
Yeah, things I feel like got really messy. I mean, probably any time that you're smashing two religions into each other and trying to kind of reconcile these different beliefs, it just gets weird, you know?
Yeah.
So I saw that Shinto kami were seen as protectors of Buddhism, and eventually the kami themselves were considered to be incarnations of Buddhas and bodhisattvas. And you would see that reflected in religious places too, right? As the ideas were melding, the physical locations where this religious stuff happened also intertwined. So you would see Shinto shrines inside Buddhist temple complexes and vice versa. You'd see Buddhist statues inside Shinto shrines and vice versa. And so in the Kamakura period, schools of Shinto started to pop up that tried to merge Shinto and Buddhist ideas in various ways. So messy, Paul.
Yeah.
Doing the research on this, I mean, you could go on and on and on for days about all these different sects that popped up and different ideas that they had about how these Buddhist ideas and Shinto ideas could work together and be true at the same time, you know? I also hadn't realized that there were ever schools of Shinto. I didn't realize it actually got that organized, you know? But it seems like most of these schools popped up directly in response to Buddhism as a way to reconcile those ideas.
Yeah, it seemed that some of the people that wanted to hang on to more traditional Japanese and gravitated towards Shinto still ended up using Buddhist and Chinese ideas of organization that they applied to Shintoism to morph their Shintoism closer to Buddhism, even though they were trying to keep that as a separate Japanese thing, which I thought was interesting.
So, Paul, I couldn't help but notice you just used the word Shintoism a couple times instead of Shinto.
I did.
Is there a certain reason that you used it that way?
No. I feel like I've heard that, but I'm unclear on the ways to say it. But I guess it's all translated into English anyways, so I'm not sure.
I saw that scholars generally try to steer away from the word Shintoism just because that implies that it's a religion with a formal doctrine. And since Shinto is more of a flowy belief system that doesn't have a doctrine,
it should just be
they
Shinto.
just call it Shinto. But
okay,
I'm sure there's debate on that. I'm not calling you out or anything.
No, that's fine. Well, I guess luckily for us, things do start eventually getting less complicated in a way.
And then more complicated in other ways?
Yeah. In the Edo period, there was a bit of revival of nationalistic sentiments, and there became Shinto scholars that were interested in the ancient native beliefs of Japan and started gravitating more towards the emperor as a spiritual leader.
But at the same time, the Tokugawa shogunate was kind of endorsing Buddhism, right? They made everybody in the country sign up to a Buddhist temple. So, you know, I got the impression that the different governments that would come and go kind of used both Shinto and Buddhism in different ways to legitimize their power. Like, you can use Shinto as like this nationalistic idea to say, this is part of our identity as Japanese people, but then Buddhism let them kind of exert their power through that system of Buddhist temples. There was a hierarchy there that we've talked about before.
It's a little more controlled.
So it's like a two-pronged approach to religion and using those religions for control.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Edo period, we're talking 16 to 1800s here. And those religious ideas continued to evolve. New schools popped up to integrate Neo-Confucianist ideas. Again, messy and complicated. It's all messy and complicated. But in the middle of the Edo period, you started to see an increase in anti-Buddhist sentiment. Is that kind of what you were getting at with the...
Yes.
Yeah. So remember, this was Japan's isolationist period, right? And people started to see Buddhism in a more negative light because it was a foreign import. And again, Shinto was seen as kind of this thing that's tied to national pride.
But funny how nobody stopped writing because that was borrowed from China.
Yeah.
So it's always picking and choosing which
Well-
things you want to say are foreign and bad and which things you're okay with.
You can't just throw away your only writing system for national pride.
Well, then your
It's too
beliefs are
useful.
inconsistent
It's too
and
useful.
illogical, Jason.
Anyway, I came across a really interesting quote, Paul.
Okay.
This is from an author who lived toward the end of the Edo period. So right around this time that we're talking about, when, a lot of nationalistic sentiments and anti-Buddhist ideas. This author is named Hirata Atsutane. He was a scholar and prominent theologian of Shinto. So here's the quote. People all over the world refer to Japan as the land of the gods and call us the descendants of the gods. Indeed, it is exactly as they say. Our country, as a special mark of favor from the heavenly gods, was begotten by them, and there is thus so immense a difference between Japan and all the other countries of the world as to defy comparison. Ours is a splendid and blessed country, the land of the gods beyond any doubt, and we, down to the most humble man and woman, are the descendants of the gods. Nevertheless, there are unhappily many people who do not understand why Japan is the land of the gods, and we their descendants. Is this not a lamentable state of affairs? Japanese differ completely from, and are superior to, the peoples of China, India, Russia, Holland, Siam, Cambodia, and all other countries of the world. And for us to have called our country the land of the gods was not mere vainglory. It was the gods who formed all the lands of the world at the creation, and these gods were without exception born in Japan. Japan is thus the homeland of the gods, and that is why we call it the land of the gods. Holy crap, Paul.
Yeah, very nationalistic. The whole first half of that quote, I was like, okay, this guy is like riding the edge of like racism or, we're better than everybody else. And then he just straight up said it. And then he listed everybody that they were better than. It's like, I'm okay with some like national pride, but this is clearly like thinking you're better than everybody else is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of shocked to come across that. It's just so, he just lays it out there. Yeah, we're better than everybody.
Doesn't it kind of ring to like what people used to say about Christianity? We're going to go, we're the holy enlightened people. We're going to go enlighten the savages and all that stuff.
I mean, sadly, I think there are still a lot of people that believe in that kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. On a more positive note, during the Edo period, travel became safer, and so religious pilgrimages became much more popular. And that gave a little boost in a way to Shintoism. Shinto to Shinto.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm learning. I'm capable. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 was fueled in part by a renewal of Confucian ethics and national patriotism among Japan's ruling class. And they overthrew the shogun and re-empowered the emperor.
This changed everything. This was a massive turning point in Japanese history. And it also had a massive impact on religion in Japan, didn't it?
A huge impact.
So Shinto and Buddhism had been blending together for over 1,400 years at this point, but all of a sudden, they were violently ripped apart.
Buddhism was seen as a corrupting influence from the outside, and they wanted to return to Japan's original purity.
So in 1868, the new Meiji government issued the Kami and Buddha's Separation Order, or Shinbutsu Hanzenrei. So, multiple reasons that they did this, right? One is that over the centuries, Buddhist sects had become really wealthy and powerful, and the government saw them as a threat. But also, like I said, because of that tie between Shinto and nationalism, the government wanted to use Shinto to reinforce its power and the idea that the emperor was divine. Can't go against the emperor if the emperor was sent from the gods. So this anti-Buddhist sentiment had grown to the point of violence, and thousands of temples were destroyed, land was confiscated, Buddhist monks were forced to become Shinto priests if they didn't want to die, and then tons of Buddhist books, statues, artifacts were destroyed.
Yeah, they didn't get rid of all Buddhist temples, but there was so much mixing that a lot of, I think we mentioned this earlier, a lot of temples had Shinto things and a lot of Shinto shrines had Buddhist things. And any Buddhist statue or building in a Shinto shrine was destroyed. There were some combined temple shrines, and those got converted to shrines. It was super messy and disruptive, you could say.
But apparently things kind of calmed down by around 1873. So even today, you can still see shrines inside of temples and things like that. The government didn't manage to weaken Buddhism quite as much as they might have hoped, but they did manage to reinforce the idea that Shinto and Buddhism are two separate, independent religions, and that Shinto is the true religion of the Japanese. I'm using scare quotes there.
During this period, they created what was called state Shinto. They began to assert more and more control from the central government over Shinto as a whole in the country. One way they started doing this is they abolished hereditary priesthood, and they created a state-sanctioned system for appointing priests so they could have control over the people that were becoming priests and passing along the message.
They actually created a specific department called the Bureau of Shrines.
Sounds so bureaucratic.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying before, like it basically tried to use Shinto to spread the ideas that they wanted to spread in exactly the same way that earlier governments had used the Buddhist temple networks for the same thing.
Yeah. Another way that they did this was through money. They started financially supporting some shrines and calling them state shrines. So if you're funding them, they kind of have to do what you say, right?
So in my research, I got the impression that this state Shinto has made things a lot harder for historians to tell like what pre-existed that and what the government kind of molded Shinto into for its own purposes.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to tell what beliefs are ancient and fundamental, which ones are actually like natively Japanese, and which ones were created in the 1800s by the Meiji government.
Yeah, some scholars were arguing this was really the creation of Shinto as we know it today. Happened right here in the Meiji period.
Mm-hmm. I heard that, like we've talked about Amaterasu, the sun goddess before, right? She's supposed to be the one that the imperial line is descended from. I heard that she wasn't even a major kami until the emperor said that that was who the imperial line was descended from.
Yeah. I think we talked about this maybe in one of the Halloween episodes where we were talking about like demons or folklore, how there's all this local tradition all over Japan, and things didn't start getting centralized until at least the Edo era because there was no printing press, there was no way to consolidate ideas into one thing. So a lot of what we think of as like ancient Japanese culture was kind of codified in the Edo period or even later.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. I mean, Japan didn't even have a single currency, like a unified currency until the Edo period too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool how you can still see like local cultures around Japan, probably going back to that. Little local areas just had these really unique personalities almost that weren't really tied as closely to a national identity.
Yeah. Another thing that happened was in the early 1900s, they merged a whole bunch of small village shrines so that most small communities only had a single shrine that was used for rites of passage and to honor and worship the emperor. So I guess by consolidating, it probably makes it a little bit easier to control what's going on.
Sure.
In the aftermath of World War II, state Shinto was completely shattered. The emperor declared that he was not a kami, And Shinto rituals by the imperial family became a private affair that's not broadcast to the country anymore.
I mean, it was the Allied powers that forced him basically to abandon Shinto as like a backing for the government.
Correct. Yes. They weren't going to let that continue.
I mean, the statement where the emperor said, "Hey guys, I'm not descended from the gods," it's called Ningen Sengen, the Humanity Declaration. I thought it was really interesting. I read that, like, even though the purpose was to make the emperor renounce his divinity, right? The way that announcement was published in Japanese really shifted the focus and like downplayed that aspect. So the focus was more on the idea that the government was with the people and it's democratic, and it wasn't the Western forces that democratized Japan, it was the Meiji Emperor. And so the Japanese people that were receiving that message really didn't pay any attention at all to the idea that the emperor was not divine. It's just kind of interesting to me that the way it was perceived was not at all the way it was intended by the people that forced it to happen.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is that it's still kind of widely accepted. I don't know how seriously, but it's widely accepted that the emperor is the descendant of Amaterasu and kind of a divine figure.
Yeah. But Japan's new constitution, which also was basically dictated by the American forces, would establish freedom of religion and ensure that there wouldn't be a state-sponsored religion going forward.
Yeah, shrines found themselves not supported by the state anymore, but they also found themselves with the freedom to guide themselves again. And in 1946, many shrines formed an organization called the Association of Shinto Shrines. And by the 1990s, about 80% of Japan's shrines were part of this association. So they kind of created their own group to help guide themselves now that the state wasn't the guiding actor anymore.
Makes sense. So these days, most people in Japan practice both Shinto and Buddhism, like Paul said earlier. But while almost 80% of the population practices Shinto, only around 3% actually identify as Shinto in surveys, because most people don't belong to official Shinto organizations. I think in most people's lives, Shinto is more like a spiritual or cultural backdrop. Like, Shinto shrines are everywhere in your daily life, and people visit them as part of, the country's culture and tradition, but it's not something that most people really organize their lives around in the way that a lot of Christians do here in the U.S. So I think, going back to those surveys where only 3% of Japanese people call themselves Shinto in surveys, I think when they see that on surveys, they're thinking, oh, they're talking about like official like organizations that people are involved with.
Yeah, it's not the same where like you're a member of a church. You're not really going to get that in Shinto. And you don't go to regular services. It's something that you drop in for certain events in your life or things like that.
So next, we're going to focus on some of the important elements of Shinto. And we've been talking a lot about these kami. Let me point out that this kami is Kami. We're not talking about communists.
I thought you were going to say Cammy from Street Fighter.
I didn't get to play Street Fighter as a kid. It was too violent. So I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sorry, Jason.
Thank you.
That explains a lot. No.
I know.
We've mentioned a lot about kami already, I think, but brief recap of maybe the main things is that kami are sacred spirits, and it's a huge variety of what kami can be. They can inhabit mountains or rocks or waterfalls. They can be people that have passed away. They can be your ancestors. They could be gods that helped create the world. All of those are kami.
But they're also hard to explain because, of course, the nature of the gods cannot be fully explained in words or fully understood by mere mortals. But people can try to understand and interact with the kami through prayer and faith. And a particular kami's will can be gleaned through observation of our physical world. So an easy example, going back to the very origins of this, right? Back to the agriculture, the harvest festivals and prayers for a good harvest and stuff. If you're praying to a kami for a good harvest and then you get a bad harvest, well, that must be evidence that you're doing something to displease them. You're doing something wrong, right?
Yeah. Better pray harder next time.
Yeah, that's how you can get a sense of what the kami actually want from you. And remember, Shinto can be translated to the way of the kami. So that's kind of very central to the whole idea. Also important to note that different kami have different personalities, and they might want different things from humans. Another important aspect is the harmony and continuity that we see coming up in Japanese culture in all sorts of ways. That's something that we talk about a lot when we're talking about traditional Japan. I saw a phrase, Paul, did you come across this? Man is kami's child.
No, I didn't.
I think the idea is like the kami watch over people, over the generations, right? The same kami, but they see all these different humans being born and passing away. So there's really a focus on the continuity of this chain rather than a focus on any individual's spiritual journey, which I think is, we're going to be comparing Shinto a lot to Christianity, right? Because that's kind of what we're most familiar with in our lives. But in Christianity, people talk about having like a personal relationship with God, and like it's very, I don't know, individualistic, but that's true of just American culture in general, so it's hard to separate those two things. But what I'm getting at is that Shinto is more focused on the bigger picture, right? Humanity's relationship to the gods rather than a single person's relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a huge key to it, is that the worshiping and the offerings to the kami are to help ensure a harmonious relationship between humans and kami. But kami, in a way, represent nature in the natural world. So it's also kind of making sure that humans are in harmony with nature in the natural world, which I kind of like.
I do too.
I think that's kind of cool. I think they're down the right path maybe on that.
Yeah, and I think it also aligns with other Japanese ideals, like the idea of sustainability, right? Traditional Japanese houses are made to be in harmony with nature, and even businesses, in Japanese business practices, like it's not just about squeezing out, as much profit as you can in the next quarter. It's about how do we make this company last for millennia, right?
Hearing you say that just like brings Ghibli movies to my mind.
I think that's a huge
kind of like the
theme.
A lot of those, the theme is like nature and like the worst parts of man colliding with each other.
100%.
And the balance there. Yeah.
Definitely. Another important element of Shinto is purification, because to be in accordance with the will of the kami, any kami, all the kami, you need to be pure. And what is purity? We're talking about the idea of sincerity, devotion, the truthful way. I came across this word, magokoro, meaning true heart. And you can kind of connect that to the idea that you should be sincere in doing your best, whatever it is you're doing, whether that's in your line of work, your relationships with others, just the way that you live your life should be in a truthful, sincere way, which I think is cool.
Yeah. In Shinto thought, humans are considered to be fundamentally pure, but in our journey through the world, we get polluted with impurities. And because this, Shinto ceremonies revolve heavily around purifying yourself to get back to your pure form and cleansing yourself of all the impurities that you've picked up.
Yeah, I think this is another way that you can really contrast Shinto and Christianity, right? Christianity focuses on like sin. We're all sinners.
We're all sinners at heart, and we need to be redeemed. It's totally the opposite in a way.
Yeah, and Shinto, we are all...
We're all beautiful, living beings.
Yeah, we have this divine nature, even if it doesn't always shine through. And so these impurities that might prevent your divine nature from shining through, the things that pollute you, would include things like death, disease, witchcraft. I guess that's a similarity with
Yeah.
Christianity. They don't like witchcraft. Flaying an animal alive, incest, bestiality, excrement, and blood either associated with menstruation or childbirth. So, I don't know. That's an interesting list of things to me.
I like get all of those until the end. It's like,
The blood?
why is bringing a new life into the world impure? I don't, it's not just Shinto. A lot of cultures have that same sort of taboo, and I've never really understood where that comes from.
I mean, I think it might just connect to the visceral reaction people have to blood, you know?
Maybe.
Seems like something's wrong.
But why is it not just blood then? It's like, no, it's specifically blood from birth.
Well, because usually other times when you see blood, it's clearly because something bad happened. You know, if you get cut or whatever and there's blood, oh, the blood is bad because it's a sign that I've been cut. But like menstruation and childbirth, obviously natural things. So you would hope that they would just be seen as like a part of life. But because there's blood, maybe that introduces that negative connotation. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying, but I also still don't really get it. But it is what it is.
But another thing that came to mind with these impurities is how just like being close to death and disease pollutes you. That reminded me of the Burakumin, right?
Yeah.
This class of people who work in things like tanning hides or
Like
anything that relates to death.
Mortuary stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Those people are seen as like
who are
unclean.
to this day discriminated against in Japan.
Yeah.
I think this also reflects in other areas of Japanese culture. Like we always talk about, we go to Japan and we're always ready for the onsen at our hotels. The Japanese focus on bathing and public bathing ties into purity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time in these Shinto contexts, if you're purifying yourself, it involves water. A lot of the time, that's one of the main ways that you purify yourself. So if you go to a shrine, you'll probably see a water trough at the entrance that you use. They got these little dippers, and you use that to clean your hands and your mouth, and you're supposed to use that to purify yourself before you enter the shrine. You can also purify yourself under a waterfall or in the sea. But it's not always water or only water that is used for purification. Salt is another thing that you'll see.
Yep.
That made me think of sumo matches. There is all sorts
A
of
lot of
Shinto
salt
imagery in sumo.
Yeah.
And yeah, when they're purifying the ring before a match, you'll see them toss salt all over the place.
Sumo and Shinto are inseparable.
Yeah.
Some restaurant owners put out piles of salt, too, in front of their businesses.
Mm-hmm. Incense is also seen as purifying. That's definitely something you'll come across in Japan, though I think it's more closely associated with Buddhism than Shinto. And another thing I learned in this research is that incense wasn't even used in Japan until Buddhism showed up.
I believe that. Fire can also be a source of purification, although not one you'd want to personally experience. But I can see that, after a fire kind of levels a place, it's reset. It's ready to spring new life from it.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to mention is if you've seen a purification rite at a shrine, you might have seen this wand thing that the priest waves around. It's got like paper streamers on it. That's called a haraigushi. You seen that, Paul?
I have. And now I know, after this research, I know what it is for.
I also saw a picture of a priest blessing a car with one of those.
Yes, me too. I've seen that before. Speaking of shrines, there are also words that are considered impure. So if you mention death or illness or even the word meat at a shrine, that's considered uncouth because those are impure words, which I can't let go as a vegan. I love how they recognize that meat is an impure word.
Okay.
Although that ties in more with Buddhism, I feel like, because you have that lean in Buddhism towards away from eating meat?
Well, what kept coming to mind in this research is like, it's hard to tell which concepts originated where.
It's impossible.
Like, there's
in some
so
ways.
much that blends together with Shinto and Buddhism and just like historically Japanese culture.
And then what got added in the Meiji period and what got added in the Edo period and who knows?
Like, we know that the number 4, right, can be said as shi, which is the same as the word for death.
Yep.
So people avoid saying that and use the word yon instead for the number 4. And like, I've known that for a long time about Japanese culture, but now I'm wondering, like, does that have its roots in Shinto? Or is it the other way around? Who knows?
I don't know.
So, Paul, let's talk about the ways that Shinto shows up in a person's life. There are a lot of, like, what would you call those? Life events where Shinto makes an appearance?
Yeah, or rites of passage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you had that in the title of this.
I guess I did. That's a good way to say it. I should have just said that.
You were right, Jason. That's a good way to say it. This starts right away in people's life with the child's first visit to the shrine. Traditionally, boys are brought to the shrine on their 32nd day after birth, and girls are brought to a shrine on their 33rd day after birth.
So it's kind of initiation into the Shinto faith and a way to purify them as well.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of baptism.
Definitely, yeah.
And this is where we get into the impurity again, because I have a note that traditionally the child was brought by a female relative of the mother because the mother was still considered impure that close after the birth and all the impure blood and everything.
I heard that too.
But nowadays, the mothers just bring them because people are finally getting over some of that stuff, thankfully.
Some of it.
But also, like, where's the dad? The mom's too impure to go, so some female relative has to bring the kid? Dad can't bring the kid to the shrine?
That is interesting.
You know, I guess maybe dad's working if the 33rd day ends up being on a Tuesday and you got to go to work or something. I don't know. But that thought popped into my head.
Yeah.
What's the next major event in your life, Jason, that might bring you into a shrine?
Well, there's a festival called Shichigo-san, which means 753. That's held every November 15th, and that's where children visit a shrine and thank the kami for their protection and pray for their health.
I don't know if you made it clear, specifically children that are 7, 3, and 5.
I did not say that, but thank you for pointing that out.
But fear not, when you grow up, there's also an adult's day in Japan.
It's on January 15th. And historically, this was a rite of passage where young men would officially join the village's Young Men's Association. But these days, it's just used as a commemoration day for people turning 20 years old.
Yeah. They'll dress up very formally in kimonos or other formal attire, and there's often municipal ceremonies. They might receive certificates and listen to a couple encouraging speeches, and then they usually stop by a shrine afterwards with their family or friends. Welcome to being an adult.
Yep.
That's kind of a cool one.
Now it's time to get married. And that's going to be a Shinto thing, too. Japanese weddings are usually done in a Shinto style.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I've even witnessed a couple while at shrines.
You got lucky. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Really? Never? I feel like I've seen it twice.
I mean, I've definitely seen depictions of it. I've seen it like in movies or
No,
whatever.
when we were in Sendai and we were at the castle ruins where there was a shrine there, but when we were sitting down, you were eating your ice cream, like there was a little bridge that we couldn't walk across because they were taking wedding photos there.
Oh, I feel like I vaguely remember that, but I might have been too focused on my ice cream.
Yeah, you were kind of pumped for that ice cream.
I was. It was a really good ice cream.
Well, weddings, there's also funerals, right?
Yes, but those are generally not done in a Shinto style. That's where Buddhism comes back into your life. And if you want to hear all about this stuff, we did a whole episode 53, that was about funerals and cemeteries.
The old saying, you're born Shinto and you die Buddhist in Japan.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And I mean, the
But death is impure. So you can't have that at a shrine where you're worshiping the divine kami, right?
That's a good point. But yeah, I think the Buddhist stuff is really fascinating. I won't go into details because we did that whole episode, but I recommend
we did the
checking that
hell
out.
episode too, with all
We
the
did,
levels
yes.
of the afterlife in Buddhist mythology.
I was getting there, Paul.
Okay.
I was going to point out
I'm jumping the gun. I'm so into hell.
You are. You talk about hell like a concerning amount, Paul.
Wait.
But yeah, Shinto really doesn't have a ton to say about the afterlife. There's much more of a focus on the here and now. In that episode about hell, that was episode 152, we did talk about a place called Yomi, which is sort of the Shinto underworld, but it's really not hell in the way that the Buddhist hell is hell or the Christian hell is hell.
Yeah. It's just like a glum, moody afterlife.
It's just where you go when you die.
Yeah.
But it's really not central to the theology at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's even overshadowed by this idea that, like, the spirits, after somebody dies, they can hang around after death to help out the living. So, like, Yomi, it's in kind of the creation myth of Shinto that we're going to get to later. But, like, in the actual practice of Shinto, it seems like it just doesn't really come up.
I feel that there might be a thought of there's kind of ancestor worship going on in Shinto. It's kind of like, well, you die, you become your spirit, and your surviving relatives worship you, and that's just kind of what happens. And then I don't know if it gets thought of harder than that.
Well, and it's hard to tell, again, like, how much of that comes from Buddhism, too, because, like, Obon is a holiday that's all about welcoming back your ancestors that have died, right? But
that's
it's
a Buddhist festival.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, traditionally, a Japanese home would have 2 altars in their home. They would have one Shinto for various kami. They might have the family kami. They might have the goddess Amaterasu that I mentioned earlier, maybe some other kami. And then they'd also have a separate Buddhist altar for their family ancestors. And that Shinto altar, did you read much about that?
A little bit.
I learned some things there.
It seems to be different, right, among different families.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was cool is that you mentioned the multiple kami that might be enshrined there. Sometimes they have a kami from like a main local shrine, but then they'll also have a kami associated with their trade or profession as well.
That's cool.
There might be miniature torii gates that they put up on it, or other little relics like that to kind of decorate it.
Yeah. The Shinto altar is called the Kamidana, which translates to the God Shelf.
Yeah.
I thought that was fun.
The God Shelf. They also do offerings on these. Put a little rice and water out there in the morning, or sometimes on special occasions, sake.
Sake is real big. We got more to say about that soon. So we've already mentioned shrines a bunch in this episode, and those are real big in Shinto. I mean, obviously, those are the places you can interact with the kami. They're also pretty central to how this whole thing works. There are around 100,000 public shrines in Japan. And I also want to point out, we did do an episode about temples and shrines. That's episode 9. That was a long time ago. We didn't go into a ton of detail. And I think we really focused more on like what your experience would be like going there. So if you're curious about like the etiquette or like how to kind of participate in that, go check out that episode. That's episode 9 again. But basically the idea at these places is the kami of a shrine is actually enshrined inside a physical object called a shintai, which is kept in the shrine's inner sanctuary or honden. So common objects that the god might be enshrined inside are things like mirrors, swords, ritual staffs, beads, jewels. Paul listed some of that stuff earlier for some reason. I don't remember exactly why that came up. But
because that was early archaeological evidence of kami worship.
That's right.
So those things go way back to being ritual objects.
Yeah. But it's not always just objects like that the kami are enshrined inside. They could also be natural objects like mountains, rocks, or trees. And I think it seems like the very origins of Shinto would have been kind of that form of like nature worship rather than the idea of having these other objects.
That does seem to be the oldest stuff. But if you have a mountain that's a local kami, there might be a shrine that's at the base of that mountain to worship it. Or there might even be a shrine or a sub-shrine at the very top of the mountain to worship that as well.
Right. And in that situation, you have like the mountain itself, and the kami is in that mountain, but then it's also inside these other objects at these shrines, right? So I remember in that episode 9, all those years ago, we talked about how like it's not like a kami is enshrined in one specific place and that's the only place they exist, since this divinity is kind of flowing through everything. A single kami can be enshrined in hundreds of different shrines. We also talked about how Inari shrines are incredibly common, right? The kami Inari shows up all over the country, and it's more like...
Yeah, there's like 40,000 of them.
Something like that. And so the idea is like each of these shintai, each of these places, it's enshrined is like a candle. Like you can light a candle from another candle, and now you have two candles, but the new candle doesn't take away from the original.
That's
right?
a great way to describe it.
I thought so too.
Yeah. So if you have a kami enshrined in one place, you can transfer that to another object and bring that somewhere else and create a new shrine and just keep doing that again and again and again and again.
Yep.
A couple other notes about shrines, maybe obvious things that people note, but generally the entrance of a shrine has a torii gate above it, and that signifies that you're now entering the divine space.
If you don't know what that looks like, check out our logo. It's kind of a stylized one. The logo is like, these things can be really basic. They can just be two poles with another third pole across the top of them. There are a lot of different styles for these things.
Other things to look for are the guard lion dog type statues. There's often one on each side entering a shrine, often one with the mouth open and one with the mouth closed. Those could be fun to look at.
Paul, an interesting thing I learned here is that images of kami are far less common than images of Buddhist figures. And actually, before Buddhism came to Japan, they didn't even use images of kami at all.
Yeah, I did find that out.
And statues of kami are never and have never been worshipped directly in Shinto.
That kind of makes sense to me, though, because kami is so vague.
Yeah.
Like, kami is the spirit inhabiting a mountain. Well, what the heck does that look like?
Right.
Whereas, like, bodhisattvas are a person that existed that reached enlightenment. Like, that seems like easier to make a statue out of.
Yeah. Oh, man, now that I think about it, we did an episode about Fushimi Inari Taisha, super famous shrine in Kyoto, and we talked about Inari and how Inari has been depicted in all sorts of different crazy ways. Like, nobody even knows if Inari has a gender. It's been depicted both as male and female. It's been depicted as a giant spider.
What?
I know.
I've never imagined Inari as a giant spider.
I know.
Okay. Open to artistic interpretation.
But remember those giant spiders at the shrine, right?
I do. Now I see.
Yeah, it makes me like, I get the impression that like when Buddhism came, it's like, you know, the Buddhist statues are so important, right? That they're like, what do you mean you don't have images of your Shinto kami? Let's get this rolling. We got to start making statues.
Them. Yeah. The merging of the ideas.
Yeah. I also learned, back to the torii gate for a second, historians aren't entirely sure where those came from. I looked into the origin of this. Like, some people say that they're, you know, purely Japanese and that they come from Shinto and stuff, but there's also an idea that they might go back to Buddhism in India, or they might even be based on a Chinese thing. So, nobody knows for sure.
Okay.
Nobody knows a lot of things for sure.
They make sense to me, though, as like, you feel it walking through a torii gate. You can tell you're walking under this big thing. It feels like now I'm in a sacred place.
Yeah. So when do people go to these shrines? You know, they exist all over the country, but like we said, Shinto doesn't have a weekly service. And I mean, practicing Shinto can look very different to different people too.
Yeah.
but some people might go at the beginning and middle of every month. Some might only go for festivals. Some people might go every day. And, we said 100,000, there was a qualifier there. What was that? 100,000 public shrines?
Yeah.
I don't know if those include the ones that aren't manned. You know what I mean? You can have really tiny little shrines just tucked away in a corner somewhere. I imagine a lot of people just probably pass by a shrine on their way to work every day, and they might just stop and have a quick prayer every day.
Yeah. It is amazing the number of shrines in Japan. You could be walking through the streets of a busy city, and all of a sudden, in this little alley, there's a tiny little shrine, or this little alcove between buildings, there's a shrine. Or you could be walking in a city, and all of a sudden, there's this huge space with a giant torii gate, and it's oh, this is an awesome shrine. Or it could be in the middle of some small town in the middle of nowhere, and they've got a shrine too. It's all over the place, all different shapes and sizes. That's part of what's so cool about going to shrines, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun to just stumble across one that you didn't expect, and then you get to go and check it out.
I think there's also an affinity for going to shrines when you need to pray for something, right?
Sure.
Like if you've got exams coming up, or you're going to have a child soon, you have certain things to pray for, and you will seek out a shrine and make your prayers and maybe buy the appropriate talisman to have extra luck.
Another thing that happens at shrines, well, I guess I did mention festivals. Let's go into a little more detail on those. Those are called matsuri in Japanese. And most decent-sized shrines will have festivals throughout the year. The type of festival can depend on which shrine you're talking about, but in general, there'd be a spring festival with a prayer for a good harvest, and an autumn festival to celebrate the harvest and thank the kami for the harvest. There might also be a separate annual festival that might include a divine procession where the enshrined kami is paraded around in a mikoshi. What's a mikoshi, Paul?
Portable shrine.
Yeah, they're these little things that people carry around on their shoulders. Not like multiple people. There's one mini shrine, and maybe 4 people are carrying around that thing.
Yeah.
If you want to hear a whole episode about matsuri, that would be episode 22. And the New Year's holiday also involves a lot of Shinto ideas and symbolism. And we did an episode about that, episode 25.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about how that
got to get your
in.
New Year's shrine visit out of the way.
Yeah. So, Paul, let's quickly go through what generally happens at a Shinto festival. And now, to be clear, there are different types of festivals. Not every festival in Japan is a Shinto festival, right?
Yes.
The Shinto ones are kind of, there's some more serious stuff going on because they're linked to these, sacred religious ideas. But there are other festivals that are more just like a big party, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, different shrines are going to do these festivals in slightly different ways. But
there's things that relate back to the ideals or beliefs of Shinto, though.
Right. There are things that the priests of the shrine are doing.
Yes. So we talked a lot about the importance of purification. So you have to become pure before you do anything with the kami. So that's usually the first step, is that the priest will perform purification rites. Participants will wash their hands, rinse their mouths, maybe recite ritual prayers that are used to cleanse the participants and the space before they get started.
I saw that sometimes the priests will do this before the public even gets there. Like it's kind of a private thing for the shrine.
Yeah, I think it made it sound to me like the priest might do it for the shrine itself, but then as people arrive, they're also careful to do their hands and their mouths so that they're not bringing impurities into the purified space.
Right. So then once all the people show up, the priest and the congregation bow to the altar, and then the chief priest goes up and opens the door of the inner sanctuary. Now remember, we said that this inner sanctuary, the Honden, is where the Shintai is housed, that object that the kami is enshrined in. So this is a really big deal. Like most of the time, that object is hidden away. Nobody gets to go into the inner sanctuary. It's an incredibly sacred space, right? And
I think I've heard of ones where it's locked away, and even the priests at the shrine only bring it out once every 80 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah, or they might even bring it out in like a locked box. Like
Yeah,
even
no
the
one
priests,
gets to see it.
Yeah, even the priests a lot of the time have no idea what's actually inside this box.
Isn't there a shrine where like the sword of like the supposed first emperor of Japan is or something, but nobody can ever see it? There's some like really crazy old things that are supposedly at some of these shrines.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
But when they do this, it is done with great reverence. There's lots of formal bowing and prayers. It's done very carefully and ritualistically as to not offend the kami. After the inner sanctuary is opened, it is time to provide offerings of gratitude and respect to the kami.
These offerings are usually in the form of food, but not meat. Remember, shedding blood in a sacred area is taboo. So
fish sometimes, though.
Okay. So the pescatarians are...
They have a point, I guess.
Paul, you mentioned sake earlier, too. Sake is an extremely common offering, and if you've been to a major shrine, you may have seen a big wall of sake barrels, and you might have wondered what those are doing there. Well, those are offerings that are sent to the shrine from various sake breweries.
Yeah. One that surprised me is apparently evergreen branches are sometimes used as an offering. I hadn't heard that one before.
Don't they also, like, write prayers on pieces of paper and tie them to the branches? I thought I saw that.
I'm not sure. I know that's the thing that's done at shrines. I'm not sure if that's done as part of these ceremonies or not.
I thought I saw that because I remembered thinking of Haruhi Suzumiya, where she's got those bamboo branches and they tie
is
the
that
wishes.
Obon, though?
No, that was actually, that's Tanabata.
That's right.
Which just happened recently.
Just missed it. Oh, man. After the offerings, the Shinto priest will recite formal ritual prayers that praise the kami and express gratitude. Can also ask for continued blessings and protections from the kami, as well as praying for peace or good fortune or success for the community.
After the prayers, there might be a sacred dance.
Sounds fun.
With sacred music to go with it. And then after all the offerings and prayers and the dance, there's a feast or a banquet where the offered food and sake is enjoyed by the participants.
It's really the best way to end a festival, isn't it?
It seems like this idea goes way, way back. The idea is that the participants in the festival are holding communion with the kami.
Okay.
So yeah, it is a really nice way to wrap it up.
But I think all of this ties into agriculture, right? It was the Yamato agricultural people that first brought this to Japan, as far as we know at least. Also, the timing of the festivals, the spring and the fall, the planting and the harvest festivals. So I feel like feasting kind of ties into that agricultural cycle as well. Well, now we've discovered a whole lot about Shinto beliefs and the history of it. And Jason is going to enlighten us with the creation myth of Japan that has its basis in Shinto beliefs.
Well, geez, with that introduction, I feel like a lot of pressure now. It's like I got to perform a theatrical adaptation or something.
I'm sure you can deliver. We've done this before.
Well, you usually help me out with some of the voices or something. No, I don't have any dialogue in here anyways. It's more of a
I would help you out if there was some dialogue.
All right. Well, don't just leave me hanging. Jump in if I miss anything or if you have any additional notes, okay?
Well, what happened at the beginning of time, Jason?
Well, let me introduce the story, like I don't know, where it's written down.
Okay, where you got it from?
Yeah, that's a hint, by the way. I talked earlier about how, all those oral traditions were finally written down in the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki. Those were those texts from the 8th century that finally tried to compile those oral traditions. But apparently the two don't entirely agree on the details of this story.
It did seem that one was written for Japanese people and one was written more for an international audience. And that's maybe why they framed some things in different lights.
Huh.
Although the one written for the international audience eventually, I think, became the one that became prevalent in Japan too, somehow.
I was not aware of that, but I'm just going to tell the story the best I can with the version that I came across. I referenced multiple versions and kind of just cobbled it together, but here we go. So in the beginning, there was just a chaotic mass of particles, which eventually separated into the heavens, Takamagahara, and the lower world, Earth. I don't think they call it Earth in Japanese, but trying to use familiar terms here. So there were 7 generations of gods that lived in those heavens before they decided to create Japan. And with the 8th generation, they decided, you know what, it's time. Let's get this Japan thing rolling. So they sent the goddess Izanami down from the heavens to earth, along with her brother husband, Izanagi. And the two of them, I feel like I need to address that brother husband thing. They were like these pairs of kami that were, I don't know, they're described as like siblings, but also lovers. But it's more like, I think they're kind of two halves of a whole.
Yeah. And that's super normal in mythology all over the world. And also, they weren't really created from the normal procreation way. They just kind of like popped into existence as gods, as a pair.
Yeah.
And that's partly why I think they're described as brother and sister, because they're inseparable like that.
Well, in the rest of the story, we're going to hear about more kami that came into existence in weird ways. They weren't born in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
But okay, so Izanami and Izanagi, they went down to Earth. But Earth at this point didn't have any Earth. It was just a floating mass of water, just all water. So Izanagi, the male half, he took his spear and he dipped it into the water. And as he lifted it out, matter dripped from the tip of the spear, or I saw it described as foam. I don't know. Something dripped from the tip of his spear and turned into an island, the first island of Japan, Onogoroshima. And if you look on a map for Onogoroshima, you won't find it because this is an entirely mythical island. It doesn't seem to correspond to any of the modern islands for whatever reason. But yeah, so then Izanami and Izanagi procreated somehow. And Izanami, the female half, gave birth to the other islands of Japan, along with more kami. And the last kami she birthed was the kami of fire, Kagutsuchi, and sadly, she died in childbirth. So apparently this birth was like a traditional birth, I don't know, this stuff's weird, man.
It is.
So yeah, she died in childbirth. So where did she end up? Well, Yomi, of course, the land of the dead, the underworld. And again, I'm going to reference that Hell episode, episode 152, because this next part of the story appeared in that episode as well. Izanagi, her brother husband, he was in such grief that he murdered the kid, the fire god kid that killed his wife, sister. And then he went to Yomi himself to get Izanami back. But when he found her, she told him she had already eaten the fruits of Yomi, which kind of means that she's pretty much stuck there. But she said she would go check with the gods down there to see if she could leave. But she made him promise not to look at her. But of course he couldn't resist. And when he looked, what he saw was a decaying corpse. And he was so disgusted and terrified that he fled from Yomi and rolled a big boulder over the opening. So that's how the relationship ended. And it was apparently less than amicable because Izanami was so pissed that she cursed the human race, promising to kill 1,000 souls every day and bring them to Yomi. So Izanagi, in retaliation, promised to make sure 1,500 people are born every day. So then, after Izanagi escaped from Yomi, he was all dirty, right? He was down in the underworld. It's filthy down there. So he cleansed and purified himself at the river Hi. And as he cleansed himself, he apparently birthed more gods. But not out of his uterus, because he didn't have a uterus. They just kind of appeared. So it says that he washed his left eye, and the sun goddess Amaterasu was born. And then he washed his right eye, and the moon god Tsukiyomi was born. And then he washed his nose, and Susanoo, the storm god, was born. Is that because when you sneeze, it's like a storm coming out of your nose? I think?
Could be.
Just an idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this cleansing and purification that he did after he came back from Yom, you remember the place of the dead, and death is an impure thing. It pollutes you, right?
Yep.
So that's where this idea of purification came from, apparently, in Shinto. That's why there are always those purification basins near the entrances to shrines. And then I mentioned Amaterasu. She was born from his left eye when he washed it, and she is the sun goddess who the imperial line is supposed to be descended from. So there you go. That's the creation myth. That's how Japan came to be and why it's better than every other country on the planet.
And why the emperor is divine.
Yep.
Very believable, right? Definitely happened.
I'm sure it's all true.
This is why we can't do religious episodes. I almost made it all the way to the end, and then I just couldn't help myself.
Welcome to PB&J After Hours. What do you want to talk about, Paul?
I think I found my next video game. It's on my wish list now.
What's that?
Sengoku Dynasty.
Why does that sound really familiar?
I don't know.
Tell me about it.
I don't know if this is 100% up your alley. I feel like this is more up my alley, other than the Sengoku part. But I don't know if you're familiar with Valheim. This is kind of like an open world building type game. Basically, you get to run around medieval Japan and build a village. You collect resources, and then you unlock things, and you can build things. It's kind of a resource gathering building game.
Is this a multiplayer online thing?
No, I think you can play collaboration games with a few friends, but it's mostly a single player thing. Like,
are there battles?
Not that I'm aware of.
And why does it take place in this Sengoku period?
I don't know. There could be, but I just saw someone play the start of the game, and it's kind of like you put down your bell, and then it gives you a radius that you can build around, and that's your village. And you recruit people to come in and level up your village and build more things. There's economy in the game. You can mine resources and stuff.
So is it like Civ in that they're like matches that you do over and over again, or is it like an ongoing single-player experience?
That is a great question, because I did not make that clear. It's an ongoing thing. It's a first-person game. Like, you are a character running around in this world. Like, you're a person.
You're not looking down at this thing from up above.
No, it's not some big map you're managing. Cool. And it's beautiful, too. I saw this guy found a village right on the shore, and he built his house on a cliff overlooking the sea. It looks amazing. That's part of why it drew me to it. I was like, I kind of feel like I could build a real medieval Japanese village.
I'm interested. Do you know what platforms it's on?
It appears to be on a lot of them. I think it's definitely on Steam. I think it's on PlayStation and maybe Xbox too. And that's what I was thinking. Do I get it on PlayStation or do I get it on my computer? Sometimes it feels like the type of game you could do pretty well on a PlayStation controller.
Yeah. Cool. I'll definitely be checking that out. So are you like, you're going to buy it for sure?
It's happening sooner or later.
All right. Well, let me know once you start.
I will. Yeah. Maybe we could build a village together.
That sounds grand. Well, I don't have a video game to talk about this time. I was going to talk about a anime.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
So Yia and I recently watched a show called Witch Hat Atelier. You heard of that one?
I have.
You seen any of it?
No.
It's really good. We both really enjoyed it. We basically binged through what was available at the time. This is like a really new show. So I think we haven't seen the last 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, we're right at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Now.
But it's about a girl who is basically a witch in training, which is a pretty common trope, right? It's almost like a Harry Potter sort of deal, but it's not really like a Harry Potter thing in any other way besides that. But it's really good. The animation is great, visuals are great, the story is great. I also like how they came up with a new system for magic. I like that, how world builders will come up with like a new idea of just how magic functions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that can add a lot to a story. It gets
Yeah.
you to buy in and kind of be interested.
And the magic system like feeds into the plot a lot.
Nice.
Yeah. There's also like a nice emotional core to the story, like her reason for becoming a witch and her motivation for getting good at it is kind of goes back to her origin story, and it's really sad, and it's deeper than just a silly magical story or whatever. It has heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to check it out, but I still do have 1,000 or so episodes of One Piece to catch up on.
Yeah, that'll keep you busy for
For a while.
So you're not going to watch any more anime for the next 10 years?
No, I
something?
am peppering some other ones in it. I watched a few episodes of the new season, or a few animes in the new season too.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for Season 8. It's been a good time. Can't wait to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I remember in seasons like 5 and 6, like, it's season 5 already? It's season 6? Well, I was like, oh, it's the end of season 8. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. We've been doing this for a long time now.
I know, it's amazing,
We're
isn't
over
it?
6 years in. We started in 2018 or 2019?
19.
So yeah, we're 7 years in now.
Look at us. I'm so proud of us.
Yeah. Come a long ways.
Yeah. Before we go, got to give a huge thank you to our Shogun level patrons: Doug Whitfield, John W., Kelly Ardong, Pamela Arola, Jack, Brady K., Yasmin, and Kevin Harris. Y'all rock.
Thank you so much.
Also, our emperors, Eric and Caitlin Seymour. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Man, now I'm feeling the weight of the end of the season. How do I ramp this up?
Our next episode is to be determined. But if you're interested, patrons get early access to the episode list for next season. Patrons also get to suggest and vote on one of the episodes of next season. So if you just can't wait, hop on Patreon and check it out.
Yeah, it really is our patrons that keep us going, that allow us to continue doing something that we have so much fun with, and we hope you all enjoy listening as well. So if you would like to help support the podcast, please do. You can find the link to our Patreon in the show notes. You can find it on our website, sightseeingjapanpodcast.com, or you could just go to patreon.com/sightseeingjapanpodcast. And yeah, the only thing I can guarantee for next season is I will be talking about my trip to Japan. It's going to be awesome.
And we'll have a bunch of other cool topics too, whatever they may be.
Indeed. Well, thanks again. And thank you, Paul, for being the best podcasting partner a guy could have.
Ah, thanks, buddy. You too. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next season.